That's why he's the enforcer of the marriage. Because it's his responsibility. It's not ours. It's his. She helps, she supports him. We're going to go back to the scripture. We're going to look at this in detail about marriage, about the responsibility of how it's set up. But we go beyond that and we do things because that's what we feel in society we ought to do. So I'm going to enter into the marriage, his and her towels, his and her cars, his and hers distant bathrooms, or whatever else. His and hers is ours. There is no his and hers. It's ours. It belongs to us. It's not a his and her house. No, it's our house. Covenant, it became one. It became ours. And the responsibility, as we reread it, of the marriage, in covenant language, that it's masculine. It means it's of the man. It's of the man, by the man, for the man. I know we're in a society today where women ask men to marry them. Well, I tell you what, if a woman ever had asked me to marry her, she'd have been embarrassed. Let me just put it like that.
I would never get married.
Huh?
I said I wouldn't get married.
I mean, it's the man's responsibility. It belongs to the man to initiate that and to carry that out because he's the responsible person for that marriage. He's the one who's the initiator, the enforcer, the carrier out of that marriage. Because we're going to see when we go through these scriptures of how the marriage lingers upon him. There are certain things that happen in the marriage that if he doesn't allow it to go on, it doesn't go on. And God honors it. We're going to talk about that. We're going to see that from the respective marriage. Because it's an awesome responsibility as men. And that's why I like talking to my men, because I get, it seems like I be nailing them to the wall, but I'm not. But we got to understand as men, it's our responsibility. We have stuff taken upon us that we don't do. We have stuff that we dump off on them, and it's not on them. It's not their responsibility, but we dump it off on them. Because that's what society is saying. The church is not supposed to be like the world. We're different. And we're supposed to do it the way God meant for it to be done. And we're not. And because we're stepping away from that, we're hurting the marriage when it comes to those who are single, for those who are young, who are contemplating marriage. We mess it up. We set the wrong format for them because we don't do it right. And they don't see good examples of what marriage is supposed to be.
It might be kind of on topic, but it's kind of off topic a little bit. When you just said, if a woman would have came and basically, asked her husband or, God, will you marry me? He would say yes. But in situations where, when you got the female, which is the pastor, her husband, he's like the first man or something.
I thought he'd be the first lady, right? He wouldn't be the first lady. Okay.
Churches that, that has that kind of stuff going on. So I was just kind of wondering, how do God, how does something like that work when, okay, the woman is the head of that church, but how does that, how does that flip when it goes back home and he's supposed to be the head of his house? I just kind of want to throw it out there a little bit.
Best example of that one, like you said, that was Dr. Joyce Meyer.
Mm-hmm.
She says that when she deals with her husband, he's still the head of the household. But also, if he says there's a conference or something going on, if there's a conference that they invite her to, if he says don't go, guess what? She doesn't go. Because first and foremost, even though she pastors a church, he still is the head of their household, and she still looks to him as the head of the household. And if he feels that if she's not feeling too good or something like that, but they've offered her something, he'll tell her don't go, and she will not go because she still looks at the same thing. God, church, man, woman. She still looks at the exact same. So that's how she adheres to him. And she doesn't overstep and say, well, I'm the pastor. No, she doesn't do that because he's still her protector. He's still her head. No matter if she's the head of the church as far as ministering and ministry, he is still her head of the household.
Is she a pastor or an evangelist? I thought she was more of an evangelist. But
She's got a church that she actually pastors. Mm-hmm.
She said she was an evangelist.
Mhm.
I didn't know she actually had a church.
Mhm. And I didn't know either for a long time that she actually pastors a church. Because I always thought she was just an evangelist, goes to conference. Mhm. See, and that, well, that's a different thing. We dealt with that with gifts. Because how you an evangelist and you're pastoring? See, you can't be the same. Can't do that. Because evangelists are gone, 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 gone. Who's going to sit and watch the people? Somebody's actually pastoring those people. Who's doing that? It's not you. Because you're in the conference here, conference here, conference here. You're not pastoring those people. So somebody else is. So, I get that with several pastors here in this area. And I tell them, no, you're not a pastor. You're an evangelist, or you're a mission, or you're this. But you're not a pastor. Because pastors sit. Because that's their responsibility. To sit at home and train. Well, you're not sitting at home and training. You're everywhere else. So you're not sitting, somebody's sitting at home training up those sheep. Or whoever that is, that's the pastor. And that's the one that they're looking to. They're not going to look to you. Or your name might be on the billboard, but they're not looking to you for spiritual advice, for growth, or anything else. Somebody's feeding them. That's the pastor. You can't be feeding them if you're in Nigeria for 6 weeks. Somebody's feeding them. And that's what I talked to several of them here about.
Oh, then I was gonna say the local example was, Pastor Petty. I talked to her before, she said the same about her husband. He says not to go somewhere, she will not go, because she still sees him as head. Even though she is the pastor, she still sees him as the head of her household, and she has not overstepped that, because her thing is, she still wants to be in a position to hear from God for those people. If she begins to overstep the boundary that God has set for her as her protection, as her husband, then she's getting outside the will of God. She does not want to do that. That's how she views it, so seriously. So if he says don't, she won't do it. She's the same way.
You agree with the title of First Man?
Mm-hmm.
That just sounds ridiculous.
That's tough. That's why I say.
I'm thankful for that clarity, because it was actually told to me that, if a woman was in that position where she was the pastor and the overseer of the church, her husband would be a deacon. That's what his title would be, to be a deacon.
I don't know who knows.
Some do co-pastors or something.
Yeah, something deep.
Mm.
Co-pastor or deacon.
That's another subject.
We had an in-depth discussion one time, a few people and myself, and my son was involved in it, about if there's a lady pastoring a church, and suppose a man joins the church, and there is a anointing of leadership upon him, to where he can actually, by the anointing, pastor that church. Will she step aside and let that true head pastor the church, or will she not?
She's supposed to, but.
Mm.
But not if she's the pastor, why should she step aside?
Why shouldn't she? Because she knows about natural order that God said. God, Christ, man, woman.
But who put her there?
They did, the congregation. That's what I'm saying. So now she's recognizing the fact there's someone with a greater anointing that can pastor this church of the order that's supposed to be. Will you submit yourself to that? Would she step aside and allow the order that's set forth in the church to go? Or would she contend against that? What would happen? We talked about that once before, because that's a big issue if you had that come up. Yes, sir.
Well, Pastor, if she know the order, she shouldn't want to pastor anyway.
And my thing was,
You know, if she know the
Yeah,
order.
that's just a controlling type thing.
See, then that's what you have to deal with. How that spirit may be. Sometimes there's a controlling spirit, dominating spirit, you know, that sometimes is possessive, you know, you
But
get
they
into that.
may